Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to?
Welcome again to Street Talk. My name is Ahmad Shakaraki. And on Street Talk, we deal with political, social, and economics here in Michigan, the U.S., and abroad. Joining me tonight,
Dennis Burnside.
Charles Thomas.
All right, man, we got a lot to cover. But one of the things is that, and I know we mentioned this before, and I have to take my hat off to Dennis. We look at all the things that Biden has done, and still his rating never goes up. Well, what do you think? What's happening?
I really can't explain that. I think a large part of it is due to the fact that people don't read papers. They don't consume news in the way that it used to be done back when I was a child and adults did adult things. They would sit down and they'd read books. They would sit down and they'd read newspapers, and they'd analyze information based on credible sources. Now, what you have, especially on the right, but the left isn't exempt from this criticism either, is a lot of propaganda, conveying to people information that you want them to hear, whether it be true or not. Now, I say with the left, they tend to gloss over and candy coat information. On the right, they've gone to the point where they just flat out lie and create a narrative that they know will be attractive to their base audience and keep eyes on the screen and butts in the chairs in front of that TV. We saw no better example last week than with the Tucker Carlson show and his so-called exposure of what really happened on January 6th. We could talk about that in detail, but to answer your question, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that what Biden has accomplished, probably better first 2 years than any president since FDR, largely goes unnoticed by the public. And I think to a large extent, I kind of admire his style. Harry Truman was the same way. Harry Truman used to say, I'm gonna be about business. You know, he went back to that old Teddy Roosevelt theory of politics. You know, talk softly, carry a big stick. I think Biden is kind of going along that line. He's just doing what needs to be done, and he may or may not be assuming that the net results of his administration will result in better lives, and people will know who to attribute that improvement to. I think he may be giving the public at large too much credit. But then again, he's been underestimated for so many months and years now that I'd be the last one to tell him change anything that he's doing.
And I noticed one of the things I've been thinking about the last few days is that if you look around in his administration, there's a lot of blacks, you know, a lot of people of color in there, and I think I'm just saying for me, I think that has a lot to do with his ratings and everything too. You know, I mean, I could be dead wrong.
Could be some blowback to that. I think people, to a large extent, tend to look at people of color as less capable. So if you have someone who's hammering in a nail and they're working as a contractor on your project and they're black, you might look at them as being not capable of doing the excellent work that you would have them do if they were, that you would presume they would do rather, if they were white. But as far as Biden's administration goes, I think most of it has to do with apathy And we had a lot of economic uncertainty when he started his administration.
Yep.
And he didn't come out making pronouncements and blowing his horn and patting himself on the back. He quietly went about his business, and I think a lot of it is unknown to the public at large. And some of the stuff he's done, particularly with the infrastructure bills, we're not going to actually see the net result of that for a year, 2 years, 3 years to come. When the broadband starts getting out to the countryside, when the roads and bridges and highways are improved to the point that it's easily noticeable no matter where you go. Those aren't the type of projects that you can just sign a document and they're instantly implemented. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of opportunity for people that are in opposition to what he's done to try to undermine his accomplishments and discredit him. And they're on TV. And TV is where it's at for most American voters. Very few sit down, like I said before, and read the paper.
Right. I was reading in the paper today, last few days, that we got the Republicans out here with a worry that nobody, only a few, know what to make of the word. What is it?
Go to critical race theory.
There's another word that they got in there, but people don't know. Like Republican or Democrats don't know what the word means and everything.
Well, there's a lot of words like that. Chuck and I, were as part of a different group, were talking about this yesterday. There's certain words out there that they've ascribed a negative connotation to, and people don't know whether or not it's true, and they hang on to it. For example, and we've talked about this on the show before, critical race theory, for all those people out in Grand Ledge and Charlotte and Mason, Potterville, your children aren't going to learn critical race theory.
No.
Your children can go to school from now and go through law school or graduate school, and they have a very, very small chance of ever encountering a true critical race theory type curriculum. It's taught at a very few select law schools and a very few select graduate schools, and for the most part, it's in a very small minority of the schools that teach critical race theory. On the other hand, you have a lot of schools out here that are trying to teach black history, or the history of indigenous Americans, or the history of Asian immigrants, or the history of the United States and its endless wars. And for people who want this polished apple, this glossed over history that makes us always the defender of liberty and righteousness in the world, they resent hearing that type of message. And for them, anything that is contradictory to what they want taught to their children, red, white, and spanking blue, is critical race theory, something that they just don't want their children to be exposed to.
Right. And that's the problem, I think. The parents don't know the history.
No.
And they're confusing the children. And in the confusion, we end up the bad guy. The fall guy.
It's not just the fact that it's that they don't want their children to know the history. I don't think they want their children to know the scale of the barbarity that this country has committed, both here and overseas. I mean, the United States has done some things through policy that would be shameful. If you looked at it from a moral perspective. When there's a documentary out, it's on HBO for people who have that, and it's called "Exterminate All the Brutes," and it's a tagline that comes from Conrad, who wrote "The Heart of Darkness," which was about the very first European exploration into the Congo. And in that book, he talked about how they had to take up arms and be on their toes with ready violence in order to protect themselves from these savages, which were African people who were going about their business. And there's a documentary based on that line that just takes a cold examination of the way the United States has treated people of color, both domestically and internationally.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people out here who don't want their children to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
It's embarrassing. It's a way of knocking the mask off
Mm-hmm.
of this benign,
Red, white, and blue,
benevolent country that we're supposed to be.
Right.
And people don't want to know. And in fact, I don't think a lot of them want to learn it themselves.
No.
You know, you have to have a certain character of honesty to be able to look in the mirror and say, what are the things that I should throw my moral support behind? And if you can look at the decision, for example, to drop 2 atomic bombs on Japan,
Yeah.
after looking at all the factors involved in that decision,
Mm-hmm.
and then conclude that was a moral decision, I don't know what type of morality that you have.
But Tulsa.
Tulsa,
Yeah.
Dresden. I mean, you could go down the line. There's a lot. You know, I'm reading this book right now, and it's about the conquering of the Congo by King Leopold, and who was the Belgian king of Belgium, and they went into
Butchers.
the Central Africa area, and were looking for an opportunity to set up a colony, because Germany had a colony, France had a colony, England had a colony, and they were becoming fabulously wealthy, extracting and exploiting people of color and their natural resources. So they go into the central part of Africa, where Conrad had written this book, and they do horrific things to the people of the Congo. And we really didn't know the scale of the atrocities until decades later. And even unto this day, we're looking at somewhere between 30 and 50 million people killed, butchered, and many more terrorized and ruined for life, had their hands chopped off because they weren't pulling in enough rubber at the end of the day. But that isn't known as the Holocaust. That's not even taught in school as a Holocaust.
Right.
If you want to learn about that, you have to have a curious mind, and you have to go seek out information. It's out there, but it's not handed to you.
Right.
So is my pain, is my blood, because I have Central African blood in my vein. My DNA comes from there. Is my pain, is my history less than everyone else's? I should just take that in stride and get over it?
Right.
Or should I do everything I can to make sure that A, never happens again, and B, there's reparations paid for what was stolen?
Yeah. You know, and I've been wrestling back and forth with this white image as a God, you know, and I think they took the chains off of our ankles and put that image in our mind to control us and abuse us as a people. And we've fallen suit because of our spirituality, you know, and to me it's working against us, because we know that it's wrong, but we go along with it. And if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting the same results you've been getting. But if you don't believe in yourself and you don't want to economically climb out of that darkness, then, you know, stop complaining.
You know, Chuck, that's a topic, man, that I struggle with so many times, because I even hear people who call themselves conscious, who call themselves woke. And by the way, people sitting at home, woke came from the Black consciousness movement. And it had to do with people acknowledging their true history and the true history of African spirituality. That's what woke was.
Yeah.
Now, what Fox News turned it into, and what these politicians nowadays talk about woke, I'm not in that discussion.
Right.
But I hear that, Chuck, in references to what happened in the Bible. What happened to this character, that character in the Bible. We had millennia, multiple millennia of spirituality that taught us to love one another, that taught us that there was a singular creator, and that there were certain moral imperatives that we must live by.
Right.
And I won't go into the details,
Right.
but it's plain as this table is read
Right.
that the precepts of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Astrozorism, you could go down the line.
Right.
All emanate from African spirituality. But you can get together with people of color, black people,
Yeah.
who call themselves well educated on this issue, and they'll jump right back to what Jesus said.
Yeah.
They'll jump right back to what Joseph did. They'll jump right back to Moses.
Yeah.
All these characters rather, that were created after 325 AD, and were created along the lines of mythical characters in African spirituality. And those people don't look at the foundation, they look at the product.
Yeah.
And to me, I think it's insulting to our ancestors.
It is.
I think it's insulting to our ancestors that we reach to one of these slave master created religions.
Yeah.
And I know I sound harsh to
No,
the
that's true.
devout
That's
Christians
true.
out
That's
there.
true.
I know it sounds harsh to people who don't know what I know. But if you call yourself a Muslim, or you call yourself a Christian, or you call yourself a Jew, or you call yourself a Hindu, and you're of African descent, you are worshiping a theological construct created by your enslavers. That's as plain as the nose on my face.
Right, and that's what I say. Christianity to us is antichrist because it contradicts everything, like you said, our spirituality. It goes against the whole damn grain. You know.
Yeah. You know, to me, it's it's a thing where, and we was talking about that, where religion, it means one thing to us as people of color, but it means totally different to people who are white. You know.
Yeah. Pink.
Yeah. You know, and so. You know, it's a thing that I never did get. You know,
I don't know if it's that bifurcated, man, because I see plenty black people, and I'm not gonna name names, but I see plenty black people at the Y, around the way during the week, running to McGregory's on Friday night, bump into them Saturday night at the different club, but Sunday they in church.
Yeah.
And by their understanding that they're living right, because they've repented, they've gone to church, they've paid the 10%, they've kept up the edifice of the church, and they're living according to the rules.
Yeah.
But see, where my ancestors came from, it wasn't a part-time thing.
Right.
And nobody was coming along to pinch hit for
Right.
you.
Right.
You either did it or you didn't.
Yeah.
You either lived right or you didn't live right.
Yeah.
And nobody's coming to save you. You saved yourself by
Right.
your actions and your deeds.
Yeah.
But that's I think that's the key difference between spirituality and religion. Religion has a hierarchy. Religion has someone at the top.
It's man-made.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And the audacity of the Catholic Church at one time to say to the world that this man that I put on top is the vicar of God.
Yeah.
He's God's boy.
Yeah.
God speaks to him.
Yeah.
And everything out of his mouth is divinely ordained by God, and you should be listening to that.
Yeah.
That's the reason why the Protestants broke away from Catholicism, because they're like, who's the Pope to tell me what to do? And this dude's sending us off to wars and with children and et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, Ahmad, religion as opposed to spirituality has a lot of rules, and it has a lot of exceptions, and it has a lot of carve-outs for people as long as they show up on Sundays, as long as they kick in that 10%. And not to go too deep into this, I don't want to sound like I'm calling people who are religious hypocrites or
believers or something.
Well, not even believers, but non-divine. Because I think that for 95% of us, we never heard about spirituality that came from our ancestors and the rules that they had on how to live. They've never heard anything other than what's in the Bible or the Quran. So for them, They're doing their best to live a righteous life, and I commend them for that. Just don't come to me and tell me that you can judge me because I don't sit next to you in a pew on Sundays.
Right.
That's where the problem with me lies, and the hypocrisy, of course.
And then, you know, really the thing is that you can be probably sitting and sitting anywhere talking to somebody, and the moment you say I'm not a Christian, oh, they
Yeah.
You're a sinner. You're dirty.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I just don't get it, you know. But we get all that tied up in our head, and we run along with it, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and you can look at the fruit that is born. You know, one of the things you hear from people who adhere to the Bible as much as they can. You know, we're supposed to judge people by the fruit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at what we're doing in the United States right now. We're finding out for the last couple of weeks, there's been article after article talking about this pervasive child labor that's going on. You've got children who have been injured on the job because they work all night in meat packing plants over here in Holland somewhere. And then they're falling asleep at school because they don't have enough rest. And then they go to the job and they fall off the roof, or they get their finger cut off because they're tired and they're small and they're weak. And we don't seem to do much about it.
Oh, no.
No, we've got laws against child labor. And when this New York Times article came out that broke the story open, and ever since the New York Times broke it open a couple weeks ago, we've seen other competing news agencies add to the narrative. But in the fallout of that story, what did the governor of Arkansas do? What's Honey Boo Boo's name? I forget her name now.
Yeah, she was.
She passed laws to make it legal.
Yeah.
To have children as young as 13 working some of these heavy manufacturing plants. Just scoffing like, yeah, that's right, that's what we're about. But then they'll tell you how immoral and how incorrect you are because you don't believe the way they do.
Right.
But that's their Christian way. In the Bible Belt.
It seems to be.
Yeah.
It seems to be. I mean, it was under the banner of Christianity that we were enslaved, raped, murdered,
And the
families
Catholic
split
Church,
apart.
The Catholic Church financed slavery.
Of course. The Pope was the very first one to sanction the idea of the transatlantic slave trade in 1492. You know, people remember that year, but they don't know that it wasn't just Columbus coming to the New World. It was also the codification of the transatlantic slave trade that prevented an all-out war between Portugal and Spain. And of course, then England jumped in, and then France jumped in, and then Germany jumped in, and Holland jumped in, and it was a Western European battle of arms who could get the most enslaved Africans to do their work for them, extract the raw material and resources out of the South, Central, and North America, and the Caribbean for that matter. So we've had a long history of people saying one thing and doing another with respect to religion.
And that's how they roll. That's their MO. White people, they say one thing and they do another thing. What was that meeting that they had because they was dividing up Africa?
The Berlin Conference. Berlin Conference in 1895. And the Berlin Conference, a lot of people don't realize this fact, led directly to World War I. And you know, we were taught in school that Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, and he was the prince or king of Serbia. And I'm like, really? This dude gets smoked and the whole world knows about it? You know, it never made sense, man. And you know, World War I is one of those eras I really haven't, you know, smacked my hand for not, but I haven't done a lot of reading on it. But I did do a lot of reading on the Berlin Conference and the fallout. And it really comes down to when they carved up Africa, Germany's share did not yield the natural resources that they expected. They were looking for gold, they were looking for rubber, they were looking for precious metals, diamonds, and they didn't get it. So they wanted to renegotiate, and of course everyone else said fly a kite, and the war broke out. That's what led to World War I. It was a battle of the colonizers over the size of the colonies. Ironically, that area that Germany wanted to be rid of or have a bigger chunk of someone else's has turned out to be one of the areas where we get a lot of the trace minerals and some of the materials that are used in cell phones. Very valuable. And we still have, all throughout Africa, colonization when it comes to the extraction and development of resources. Most of what's done there is not for the benefit of the Africans who live in those countries. It's done for the oligarchs who run their governments, and the wealth is extracted overseas. And again, most of them are Bible and Quran thumpers.
Pie in the sky people.
Yeah, absolutely. You may not get it here, but keep it up, Rastas. Keep working hard.
You get it when you get up there.
You're going to get it up
yonder.
Glory. Glory.
And when I was in Africa, the poverty that, I mean, they survive off fishing, villages that fish and all that. But they walk everywhere, man. I mean, it was incredible. Kids. I mean, they starving, selling peanuts. And soap and toothbrushes.
Walking 5 miles to get a bucket of water.
Then walk 5 miles back. And the richest land in the world.
Well, that's the reason why Muammar Gaddafi was murdered, because he looked around the world and he said there's no continent on earth richer than Africa. We've got all these sovereign nations. Why don't we make our own currency called the African? And if you want our diamonds, if you want our rubber, if you want our gold, platinum, precious metals, trace minerals, you're going to have to pay for it with our currency, not the U.S. dollar. And next thing you know, Omar's pushing up Daisy. So the colonization of Africa and the exploitation and brutality continues. It's just done a lot more surreptitiously and in a way that people just don't attribute to outside factors. But if you look all over Africa, China has troops all over the place. The United States has troops all over the place. NATO, the NATO countries have troops all over Africa. They're holding it down, and King Leopold of Belgium would be proud.
And we see now in the last few days what China brought two other nations together. What was it?
I don't know, but they plan on colonizing Africa.
They and like you were saying, they're every place. The Chinese are every place in Africa.
They're running out of land, just like England. Caucasians ran out of land in Europe.
Well, they've never had a lot of land. Europe has never been Europe really isn't a continent. It's the western section of that landmass that goes from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, and it's never been an area of the world that's had a lot of wealth, objective wealth, like gold, again, diamonds, timber, et cetera, et cetera. But they've been able to go and use military might to take what they want, and that's what it really comes down to. That, man. It's like you got it, I'm gonna take it, and I'm gonna take it under the terms that
But first they're coming with the missionaries, Christianity, and then once they get you brainwashed, then the military comes in.
Well, what did my man say? He said they came here, they had the Bible, I had the land. I closed my eyes to pray with them. I opened up my eyes, and I got the Bible, and they got the land. That's been duplicated all over the world.
The American Indians.
What do you think? Well, we almost short of time, but the guy in Florida, DeSantis, what's he trying to do in Florida, man?
Well, Jim Crow redux. It's an effort to, first of all, bring attention to himself. He's a Trump part 2. And it's also a way for him to gather political capital by doing what a lot of his people want done. They don't want their children learning about African American history. They don't want their children reading about a gay couple raising a child. One of the books they banned was a book about 2 male penguins raising a baby in a zoo, which is a true story, by the way, and was created into a children's book. They took that off the shelf. So black people who have equal rights and access to capital and the ability to teach themselves, we can't have that. We can't have people who are gay being given the same level of respect in society as heterosexual couples. We can't have people coming here overseas escaping the hell that we created in Central America, Honduras, Nicaragua, et cetera, et cetera. all coming from the decision by Ronald Reagan to trade arms for hostages. We could do a whole show on that. And those people are coming here en masse because their culture has been destroyed and their economy has been destroyed, and we're talking about sending them back. You know, all those chickens always come home to roost, man.
They always.
Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you are too arrogant. If you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power, and I'll place it in the hands of a nation that doesn't even know my name. Be still and know that I'm God.